is beautiful, there's so much hope. Even in the darkest of times, there's radiating light. Live each moment fully and completely, and dance to the music of the lush green earth.
Oh yeah. Hey guys, how are you doing? So I'm just going to talk straight through to the camera for this particular video, and it's about sensory overload. So here we go. Sensory overload, in my opinion, this is my experience, okay? Sensory overload is a bit like trying to run on full power when your batteries are down. And you can't. You simply can't do it. So what happens? Well, we hit the wall. Now, it's not uncommon for autistic people to have sensory overload, and this is, as I say, it's quite well known within the autistic community that sensory overload is a thing. And I'm going to tell you my experience, one of the classic incidents where I actually had sensory overload. So what happened was, I was a bit younger. This was going back to 2016 or 2017, one or t'other. I think it must have been there roughly. And I hadn't long found out that I had autism. So, day number 1, I go to the fair with a friend that I had at the time, and I did nothing else that day other than go to the fair, the fun fair with the friend. And I had a lovely time. It was really very nice. She and I, we both had fun, the sounds were interesting, everything was really quite pleasant. Day number 1. Day number 2, for a variety of different reasons, I found myself back at the fair, but there was a difference. I had other things on that day, and I had just had a meltdown. So yeah, having an autistic meltdown and then being at the fair was just too much. And the sound warped around me. It changed. It became distorted. The people became a blur. Everything about the fair was anything but fun. And yeah, that was really quite severe sensory overload. Now, looking back at it, I probably should not have done anything else that day after I had my meltdown. But we live and learn. And it's interesting, the more packed your schedule is, the more likely meltdowns are. And sensory overload, I think, can lead to meltdowns if you have hit that wall and you try and then go over it. Not very easy. Not very easy, and it can lead to some difficulties. So, yeah, that is sensory overload. Now, what do I recommend if somebody has sensory overload? I recommend turning the lights out in the room or dimming the lights and letting the autistic individual that you're looking after, or your friend, or anybody, let that person come to themselves, let them unwind, because you do not want them to go into autistic shutdown. Now, I will do a video on autistic shutdown. I definitely will do that. But autistic shutdown's a very real thing, and it's very difficult to deal with, so you don't want somebody to get to the point where they shut down. And when I say it's difficult to deal with, it's difficult to deal with for the individual, but it's also difficult to deal with for the people around the individual. So yeah, I think the long and the short of it is, if you want to avoid sensory overload, do your very, very best to help the autistic person lower the amount of things in their schedule. That's a biggie. Now, I hit sensory overload if I've had too much input of any kind, and it's not necessarily bad input. This could be good input as well, but too much of it. Have you heard that phrase, too much of a good thing? Right? Well, you can get too much of a good thing. And sensory overload can happen as a result. It's not very easy to get somebody out of sensory overload once they're in it. You're better off trying to avoid sensory overload in the first place. And I'm kind of losing count of the amount of times I've said sensory overload in this video. Quite a few. But yeah, I think that if the autistic person has other comorbidities going on, like for example dyspraxia is a biggie, dyslexia, dyscalculia, anything, mental health issues, anything at all comorbid with their autism, I think it's very, very sensible to keep that schedule down and still allow your autistic loved one fun, but you've got to understand that the energy tokens it takes for an autistic person to go out and socialise are perhaps more energy tokens than they've got to give. Now, what's an energy token, you might ask? It's terminology in psychology, and what it refers to is somebody having energy supplies. So an energy token might be spent, it's an analogy in psychology, might be spent if somebody is going out for a walk with their friends. Now, I might only have 5 energy tokens worth of supplies to do something in a day. And sometimes I have less. So say I only had 3. Well, even if you are doing something pleasant, it's still 3 energy tokens that you've got, and that's it. So doing something pleasant takes an energy token. So if I've got 3 pleasant things to do in a day, well, that's my 3 energy tokens gone before I even do things that are perhaps necessities that need done. So it's very important to budget your time. And I might do a video on budgeting your time, we shall see. But I hope that helps somebody out there. It's a bit of a short one, this video. But I just wanted to talk to the camera this time and get my thoughts out about sensory overload. So there we go. Alrighty guys, bye.
Live each moment fully and completely, and dance to the music of the lush green earth.
Oh yeah.